really what I'm going to be covering is those slides, and I've added some more actually. I've added a little bit more of the research that we conducted at InPrint, in the run-up to InPrint, during InPrint, both from visitors who attended and from some of the research projects we did with IT Strategies up to the show. Okay, thank you. Sound and image is good. So I think that just might be a useful addition just to wrap things up, bit of extra value. The starting point was sort of really to look at the where manufacturing's changing, because personally, I can my various sort of trips, discussions, and stuff since we launched the show, all of us have noticed sort of various patterns forming, I guess is the right word, in terms of how production is changing, how consumers are altering in their perhaps their desires and wants, but also how they consume information and how that affects production of things. I'm going to start with this sort of IDC research paper, which probably doesn't necessarily tell you anything you don't already know, but what it does do is really helps sort of give us some big chunks of insight in terms of where they see manufacturing currently and into the future and what the key changes will be. And it's a PDF that's freely available, so if anybody afterwards wants a copy of this, I've got a copy, I can email you it, so just email me and I shall get it off to you. One of the headline things, which again probably makes sense, makes perfect sense, but manufacturing itself is undergoing a renaissance according to the guys at IDC, and I think that does link in with the kind of macroeconomic landscape changing. And if we all remember back to 2008 when the kind of banking crisis which led to the recession, that really I think was a result of economies altering through the 70s and 80s, where a huge amount of offshoring took place, particularly from the advanced economies, that transformed themselves more into service economies and financial trading economies. And I think that that whole episode really proved that is not a sustainable model. And I have a nice picture of Angela Merkel there, really, in that Germany stood up as a bit of a beacon, really, for a society and an economy that fully supported its own manufacturing base and continued believing in it. I think still represents well over 20% of the entire GDP in Germany is made up from manufacturing, and I know that the EU have got targets to increase member states' percentage contribution to GDP into a similar figure to Germany's. And what it did for Germany is well documented in that it made Germany a far more resilient economy and far more robust and able to contribute in a healthy manner and a sustainable manner. So manufacturing has become higher on the list of priorities for governmental policy, and I think that's a key driver for why I think industrial print is growing and will continue to grow very much so as part of that continued emphasis on manufacturing. One step on from that, and reshoring seems to be talked about an awful lot these days, and I think with good reason, based upon the research I've looked at, both anecdotally and also by sort of various federations and research documents and so on. And because there's a huge amount of offshoring, as I've already said, in the 70s and 80s, it makes sense, doesn't it, that those economies start to increase their own wealth. So China particularly is and has just simply become more expensive. The wealth of the middle class really means that things are becoming more expensive. So that has also been pushed by the government, the Chinese government, that's increased, put in a policy for increasing wages 15% a year, which places a lot of pressure on businesses in China to pay their staff more. And so the low cost low-cost centres that were formerly no-brainer places to manufacture are not quite as appealing anymore. And not least as well, adding to that, its distance is working against it because of the speed of markets, speed of change, speed of wanting products now, and so on, that actually the distance is becoming a disadvantage, as well as the cost that it takes to get products from place to place, as well as the time it takes. So certainly seeing a really increased competition in local markets and an increased need for speed. And if you think reshoring is one sort of manufacturing trend, but allied to that is the consumer pull for localized products. And that makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, that we live in a personalized world these days, but a more customized world. But look at Europe. Look at how fragmented Europe is culturally, linguistically, and everything else. So our tastes are different, and not only that, we have started, I think, or consumers have started to resist generalized products that are generally manufactured and generally targeted at them, and are much more interested in receiving goods that are produced locally, that perhaps have an ethical element to them, and that are where they can visibly see where the product's started and finished. And I think that's a radical change, and I think that's continually impacting on manufacturing as an opportunity, and I think as well as that, it throws up an awful lot of challenges for particularly the very big manufacturers to meet that change. This next slide really encapsulates it very well, I think, and that's Xenia and Tim Phillips that has used that slide before, and I think that sort of articulates it quite well in that our digital world is it's not necessarily meaning that we're consuming products that are digitally produced, but it does mean that the way we source them and research them and so on means that we can find information quickly and we want it immediately, and I think that's changing manufacturing considerably. I don't know the figures, so I don't know how that's impacting manufacturing in a negative way in terms of decreasing demand. I actually think in a way it probably won't be. Possibly notice it in China so much. I think other countries are being touted as even lower cost centres. I know, for instance, textiles moving into Vietnam and Bangladesh quite significantly as a result. But that is a significant change, and I think we can see that, and I'm sure you can as well, in terms of how that's impacting our day-to-day, and also our the way we create products or the way we interface with customers. This really repeats where China's getting expensive, and those are facts that really play out. That kind of increases in wages are just not happening in the advanced economies, but certainly are in China. The other fact that the IDC mentioned, and I think this is an interesting one, really sort of following on the point made in terms of digitization generally, is that there's actually a consumerization of manufacturing. That really means that, if we're talking localization, it really means that consumers are just so well informed now that actually the old industrial model of sort of top-down, hierarchical, generalized manufacturing is altering, meaning that it's not as clear as it used to be who our customers are. So it's not necessarily B2B, it's then B2C, it's B2B2C, so that every element of the chain is part of the both communication and consumption mix and information mix. And it means that consumers themselves are not necessarily as tolerant as they used to be regarding branding, and there are affinities and alliances with brands, and it's those consumers that are driving the speed of business. And I think that brand agnostic fact is both an opportunity but also a big threat for the big manufacturers. So that, and I think supply chains around the world are adapting to this because they're having to. And it's very clear, I think, if you think some of the products we use on a day-to-day basis, think of some of the smart technologies it's pretty clear to us who their suppliers are, where they produce their goods, and the names of the companies, the conditions of the workers and stuff. If we want to find this out, we can. And that is a radical difference to probably even 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So consumers are incredibly educated, incredibly smart, and very easily able to compare and contrast products. And what motivates them isn't always the price, it's the way things are made and then where it's ended and where they end up, as I've already said. So if you've got smart consumers at the top, it makes sense that there's a growing emphasis towards smart manufacturing. And Germany itself, I think particularly enlightened, has a government policy towards the Industry 4.0, which is the fourth industrial revolution, which really means being able to highly automate production, using really sophisticated IT and the Internet of Things to meet the change that they can see in demand and that manufacturing needs to respond to, because products need to be globally local. You need to be able to kind of meet a local need in a global context in order to, it's that odd thing of being globally local. It's like, well, 6 years ago the word was globalization, but I think now it's changing. It means whole supply chains have got to reinvent, and I think a big emphasis on collaboration within those supply chains, and also within the manufacturing business. I think the other thing IDC mentioned is that these manufacturers are having to reinvent their people, their structures of how they're teams, and this notion of self-forming teams, where the businesses are structured obviously to meet demand and efficiencies and all that, but actually the teams are flatter. It's not hierarchical. This whole sort of shift is genuinely happening. So that kind of encapsulates what I was saying about some of the sort of macro trends that I think are actually leading to a buoyancy for industrial print. And what I'll do now is talk to you a little about industrial print, what we define it to be, and then a bit of research, and then finish off a little bit on the show. So, industrial print, what is it? Before we launched the show, we had a series of discussions and disagreements, debates over what is industrial print, what is, and at the end we had to just decide ourselves. And so we used this image because we felt that was quite a good way of just readily saying, well, that's it really. But in words, it's functional and decorative print in manufacturing, and it's quite wide. It's from packaging through to pharmaceutical, from ceramics through to aeronautical. And I guess a lot of people said it'd be very challenging to be able to represent that as a show. The amazing thing is we did get visitors from all of these areas, which proves the point again, I think, about the importance of industrial print actually as a technology space, but also as an issue within manufacturing. The other sort of thing that's clear to me, and is clear pretty much to everybody I speak to, is that Europe is really where industrial print is advanced, most advanced. I sort of look at why, and if you look at that map there, I think largely speaking a lot of it is confined to that geography really. And certainly if you look at the places I've been to over the last few years, it tends to fall within that catchment. Well, why is Europe leading? I think we've talked before that Europe's clearly got a tradition of being outward looking, so we have, I guess, an advantage in that we're very happy to jump on a plane and here, there and anywhere just to learn more, to create relationships. It means we have generations of expertise and links with raw materials suppliers and all this kind of stuff that perhaps the more conservative regions don't have, more conservative in terms of being as geographically extensive as we are. I think that tradition places us in an advantage with our supply chains actually. And also it places us an advantage therefore in terms of being able to create products quickly, efficiently and cheaply and respond and be responsive. And the other tradition is the fact I've already mentioned, we're so diverse anyway. So actually, if you use the word short run, which seems to be what everybody's saying these days, is that everything's short run. Well, actually, in Europe, compared to the States, we are a short run region. You know, we create very specific products ready for very specific areas. I actually think Europe also experienced probably the most adverse recession, and what that did was really consolidated lots of industries where either the big guys bought the little guys or the little guys disappeared, or so on. So it left a very efficient marketplace that really has made it very difficult for new businesses to enter and compete. So it's almost a situation where you disrupt as a business, or you die, or you don't exist. So that's kind of what offers an opportunity for somebody, and for a culture where you don't have the option to be a Me Too in the same way that you would do perhaps in Asia or in the US. That obviously leads to a competitive landscape, and that sort of links the recessionary point in that it's always been competitive. It's always been more competitive here, and since I've been working and talking and looking at different areas of the world, I think Europe's always been extremely competitive, and I think that places emphasis upon innovation. I won't go on about the localization and reshoring, but I think those facts too bear true for Europe as well. I think all those things together place Europe in the forefront. So in a way, you may think, we may feel superior, but actually the reality is we have an advantage. We have an advantage over other parts of the world because we just have to be more open-minded and more able to adopt new technologies. So IT strategies were and are still, Mark Hanley was on our panel yesterday, our research partner, and when we began the journey of InPrint, we looked at the different markets and tried to place values upon industrial print in terms of its market size, and found, although this slide's in euros, so we're roughly looking at around a value of $100 billion, and that's just the analog element of industrial printing. And it's fairly clear that the commercial print sector, as the world goes short run in that part of the market too, commercial print has contracted considerably, and will continue to contract considerably, and graphic printing is in a state sort of gentle growth, linked mainly with just general consumer growth. So InPrint or industrial prints really bucks the trend compared with other printing markets. So obviously that lends weight to thinking that there is a positive future for industrial print. It's got the potential to grow to around 20 billion in actually now yet less than 10 years. I think that is fueled mainly by Inkjet. The industrial Inkjet is rated by Proximus to have a CGR or growth rate of 11% per year, and in actual fact industrial Inkjet is the top 3 recipient of venture capital funding after green technologies and social media. So that tends to also add weight to why industrial print is perhaps so buoyant. Certainly we're seeing this with the show, and the kind of results that we're getting from the kind of activities we do and put out, and the way people are generally very buoyant, certainly so when compared to the commercial print sector, where there's a definite flatness in energy, and a lot of that is being pushed by industrial Inkjet. I think the analogs part of the market is very strong and will continue to be so, but that is linked more to just general manufacturing growing in areas where analog is a vital component, but a lot of the growth is being pushed by industrial Inkjet. Just coming on to some slides now that we took from visitors who attended and described where they came from and so on. We had a show that was called InPrint, and people said at the beginning, we don't want another print show, we don't want another commercial print show or a wide format show or whatever. So it was clear for us that we wanted to attract a different type of people, and we managed to achieve that with nearly 52% coming from the manufacturing sector. That's where they defined themselves to come from. Whilst the print people did attend, they didn't attend as a majority. And some of these people within the manufacturing world, some of the big name brands and so on, which was also a gratifying thing to see, is that visitors came from sort of senior positions. So they took industrial print to mean something strategic, something. I think again, it's not necessarily a push towards why InPrint's better than other shows. I think it just demonstrates what industrial print is in the minds of people and businesses and so on. In that it's a strategic issue, it's an important component, and also it's an important way to potentially create new value and be competitive and gain competitive advantage. So it's really senior people, just under 54% of board level, or master workers. I think that does distinguish this show from other events, because some of the other events are not necessarily getting the similar, that same profile of attendance. Not forgetting it was a launch show; it never happened before. The people that came from very large, medium, and small companies, which tends to say, well, actually, that's a supply chain, isn't it? That's kind of, they've got consultants that are people that have the expertise that help the creation of the product, or connect people in the supply chain, right up to the companies that have 10,000 plus employees. Again, this is really not normal for a print show. Most print shows attract people from print companies that have what you'd call small to medium-sized company profiles. Nothing wrong with that, but that's how it is. And InPrint really delivered a high level of top end and small end, so they're quite significantly different, and also a good representation of kind of manufacturing audience. On site, we did some research, and 339 respondents were interviewed. What we did this for was really to understand why people attended, and really to sort of see what was driving them. First question: what was your prediction for the growth of the industrial print sector? And all of them believe it's growing, from varying different levels, which is great. We've already established that. But probably more interestingly is the drivers of investment, or for investment. I think the two biggest sections, 19% and 19% at the top there, said interesting things. It's new technology that enables new revenue, or more customized production capability, and I think that really is the driver. And I think if you're honest, to a normal print show, you're going for efficiencies and for gains, because you can't really compete in much else. So that's another indication that the market's there to create new things, to develop new ideas, to improve, and whilst lower production costs are still important, they're not the core motivation. I think that again is an interesting fact. Visitors came to solve particular problems, but we asked them what they thought of exhibitors, and fortunately our exhibitors understood the show, understood that it was as much about the people they put on their booths as it was about the technology they might show. So the people they had on their booths were senior people, either business people, strategic business people, or technical people, and I think that was really important, because that interface between senior exhibitors, senior, clever, technical, whatever you want to call it, meant that the connection was high level exchange, expertise and problem solving. There was a buzz on the floor, not just because there was a lot of people there, but because the people that were there were extremely, there was an affinity, there was a good match. It was more about solutions than selling fixed products. So if you go to a traditional print show, the normal approach is to place product, get the sales team on the floor, the sales team pushes the product to people visiting, and that's the normal kind of approach, and that's kind of the what you expect. InPrint was much more, let's talk, find out what the problem is, what can I do to help you solve that problem? If I can't do it, I know there's somebody else who might be able to do it. It's a lot of collaboration, anecdotally it's a lot of collaboration on the show floor, and that means there's a lot of collaboration taking place in the industry. And if you listen to the what I was saying earlier, that key thing about supply chains collaborating, I really saw that at InPrint, and I also think that's another reason why it's different, and also which is why it's exciting. So people did business, but they did it the other way round. So it wasn't about push selling. I think that's a key dynamic that was different, and lots of it was about networking. People also came for customized stuff. They weren't there purely to source machinery that had already been created or invented and that had minor tweaks available. They wanted new stuff that was designed for them, and actually 42% said they wanted it designed cooperatively together. And again, that's an evolving space, but also it makes sense, doesn't it? A manufacturer of pharmaceutical products is going to want a vastly different solution to a manufacturer of automotive. So 86% prefer customized technologies. So that does link in with logic, but it still emphasises again why the show is so different. Technology of the future, we asked, and weren't sure what we would get back. What would dominate in the future? And we asked, would it be a blend? Inkjet's slightly in front here, but I think what's more interesting is that the big chunk see a blend of technologies, and we sort of had this discussion yesterday. Will digital replace analog in various industries? My personal opinion is that it doesn't make sense for it to do that. It's got a huge amount of value to create of its own, where it can either blend with a traditional line or just do something completely new. And if you look at this kind of reshoring and localizations trend, you can see where one day where retail and production are virtually synonymous with one another, where products are probably designed partly with the consumer assisting. We can already see this in textile to an extent and some of the others. So that reinvention is going to require a blend of technologies, really. I've heard that screen printing's in various retail shops, not because they absolutely need it there, but because actually the consumers like it being there. So that's kind of changing where the consumer's pushing it. So Inkjet wins, but blended technology is close behind, because I think that's a reality. I can't see a day where digital, well, in the next 15 years to 20 years, where digital suddenly completely replaced it. But that's just my opinion. We have a strong amount of representation at InPrint for screen printing, and for good reason, because screen printing is, for many applications, the best and the fastest and the most durable and the most precise and the most able to withstand rigorous testing and conditions. And digital does other stuff, and Inkjet does other stuff. So we did have some aims with InPrint to create a different type of print show. We did that, I think. And you never really know until you see it happening on the show floor. We had 110 exhibiting companies, so it wasn't a huge event, but as a launch show, it's very good. It's very focused, very niche. Our ratio of visitors to exhibitors was actually very good. Yeah, just under 7,000. But they came from the supply chain, and it was a real emphasis on creating new potential in business. That's the thing I didn't mention, but the IDC has said as well that future manufacturing will be about fulfilling needs, not about efficiency. That efficiency will be an assumed element of the whole production chain, but it's about fulfilling needs, and I think we see this at InPrint, and it does prove the show success that it is a desirable growth market. InPrint is different because it's technology, and it's about technology, cutting-edge technology, and technical expertise. And it's just, I think the timing, the success of the show was partly because the timing is good, because there is this increase in localization where manufacturing is changing. Think about it, how much InPrint, I keep saying InPrint, but industrial print is part of the function and decoration of products in manufacturing. It's pretty significant. What was also surprising, because quite sure when you have to, but we had a huge amount of interest from some of the biggest, most established, well-known names in manufacturing attending. Not necessarily because they're the people that are buying industrial print machinery, but because their supply chain is, to some extent. Some are, most not, because they know that it's an important area of innovation and production, and that they need to know about it because of these mega trends in manufacturing. I'm sure of it. Like I said, we had a really wide spectrum of attendance from all of these areas. Really united around manufacturing, about the need for print in manufacturing. So the next show is next November 10th to the 12th, 3-day show alongside Productronica, which is an excellent show, a leading show for electronics manufacturing. So the functional element of InPrint does suit that profile, and we're positioned nice and closely to Productronica, and we think Munich's fantastic. We moved it from Hanover to Munich because Munich's a wonderful fairground, but also because it has great international links in. Hanover's great, but we feel it's a good second place to go is Munich. We're developing the show, we're adding elements to it. We'll be a functional and decorative conference, but also a focus on packaging. We see innovation in packaging in print. It's happening. We have a number of exhibitors with technologies for packaging, and we'll be developing that content path for the next InPrint. We asked the question for what's the next big thing. It could be a number of things. I think there's a huge amount of development going on in the decorative space and wood surfaces and laminates, where inkjet engines have developed nicely in sort of areas for single path for textile. We're seeing that in other areas too. There's, like I said already, a big opportunity in packaging. So we will see this really play out on the show floor at the next InPrint. So yeah, that's really sort of summarising. We've got a good opportunity to continue growing the event, enhance it, enrich it, and all of those things. We'll be running more webinars like this, and we'll be conducting more writing more reports, conducting more research, and be very happy to hear any feedback from you, any ideas you might have, and also anybody that wants to get involved in writing blogs or anything else. Next year the show is 50% bigger. We've had to take in more space, and yeah, be very happy to have you at the show in some way. The focus for the technology is really, it's important to note, screen printing, specialty printing or speciality printing, digital, inkjet, and 3D, and we think that will continue to be where the show develops. Visitors, as I've already said, came from a wide section, sourcing innovation and customized first, customization. So that kind of concludes my presentation. And I hope that helped sort of clear up what at least slide-wise what I was saying yesterday, and I added in some more stuff as well. I hope you found that useful. I will share the slides with you. I'll just turn it into a PDF and send it across to you once we're finished here. If anybody has any questions, I think you can type them and I can answer them, or you can just email me after. Really, I don't know how we are on time. Blimey, I've talked for half an hour. There you go. Thank you very much. Otherwise, I shall conclude the webinar. Happy Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you. Frederick Morsha, you have a question?
Sorry?
Hello, Frederick. Did you
How are
have a
you?
question?
Not now, but I was just reading the slides you put. Um, where do the data come from for the slide? What is the next big thing?
That's come from IT strategies.
Yeah, but okay.
Yeah, that's
Here, yeah, okay. When you have figures for 2012 and 2022,
okay. Yeah, it's from
and
2012 to 2022. Yeah.
I was just wondering how different are those figures calculated compared to the way it's calculated in the Smith-Spira study.
I can ask Mark to provide you with some more insight information on that front.
Yeah, I mean, you see each company calculates a different way about the present value or something. So I was just wondering how it is calculated compared to what Smith-Spira is doing.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. I'll ask him to connect with you on that.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Anyway, I'm looking at some other questions here.
Yep.
So, okay, I'm looking out here, and I think we're done. Unless anybody else got anything else to say. Merry Christmas. Goodbye, everyone. Have a good Christmas and a great 2015. Ta-da. Bye.